Okay, good morning and happy Friday. My name is David Heacock. I'm the founder and CEO of FilterBuy. I'm on a mission to build the world's leading indoor air quality company and to document the journey along the way and hopefully share a few of my lessons with all of you that I learn along the way so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that I have on my path. And, we release a video every Friday morning that we put a lot of work into to do a deep dive on a particular topic or a particular subject that we think is important or interesting. And, you know, this week, we did a video about how there is a rise of people that are actually ditching their traditional paths and moving to blue collar work and blue collar jobs. And it's something that I think is a trend that I think is likely here to stay. And it's something that we kind of dug into a bit. And I think within our content are going to dig into it a decent amount more over the coming weeks and months. But, I think that the traditional education system is largely broken in the sense that we basically trained people to take on large amounts of debt to go out and learn skills that are oftentimes outdated before they even get before the ink on their college degree actually dries. And I think that's just not a smart thing as a society and not a good trade for most people. And the beauty of the more blue collar trades is oftentimes you can get paid to learn these skills. And the beauty is if you learn these skills, you can ultimately take those skills and turn them into opportunities later on in life. And that is why it's something that I think I would encourage a lot of young people to consider before going out and taking on debt, especially to get a marketing degree or a sociology degree or whatever it is that you're studying in college. If you took the time and the money that you would be spending on that and put that effort into learning a skill or a set of skills or learning as an apprentice or getting a trade degree of some kind, then you can oftentimes make more money earlier, not have the debt that is associated with modern college degrees, and even more importantly, have optionality in the future to build that into a real business, which is really the content that this channel is about and what we are what I'm passionate about, that type of entrepreneurship that you can basically take anything in any type of skill or any type of trade or any type of an idea and actually make it your own and turn it into a successful business. And, I was able to do that from an air filter. You think about an air filter, very much a commodity item that is in everybody's home or business, but not something that most people probably think about. And when I started this business 12 years ago, you could have easily said, well, that's an established market. There's no opportunity left within that. You'd be better off going and doing something else. But ultimately, if you have a vision and a commitment and a kind of unique competitive advantage that you can craft, then you are able to turn just that kernel of an idea ultimately into a meaningful business. And I believe you can do that in almost anything. But it takes, it takes the right mindset. It takes the right set of skills. It takes the right, experience. And oftentimes you can only get that by going out and, trying it yourself, actually taking action against your vision yourself and learning, from that feedback loop in those feedback mechanisms. But that is why with this channel, we're going to do our absolute best to educate you so that you can not make some of the mistakes that I've had to make the hard way and hopefully help you along on your journey. So with that, Michael, let's go ahead and start taking questions. Mike Goodman, 33. What's the biggest bottleneck you faced early on in producing filters in-house, and how did you overcome it? The thing that I underestimated the most, starting it from scratch, was just how much institutional knowledge that that you get when you have been doing a process for a long period of time. What I mean by this is when I went and I studied other filter companies or other filter manufacturers, when I looked at it with my eyes and kind of observed what was happening, it's a very simple looking process. And I said to myself at the time, I can easily replicate this. How hard can that be? The machines were not super expensive, and the process was very basic to explain. Like I could explain it to you in about 5 minutes. And what I was completely underestimating was how much institutional knowledge or just like details that people that have been working doing a process for years learn through that kind of trial and error through just having to solve these problems day in, day out, that I was completely dismissing when I thought, oh, I can just buy the machines, hire people and train them in this basic process, and we're going to be able to manufacture efficiently and everything is going to be great. The reality is it took me multiple years of lots of pain to actually create that institutional knowledge that would have been that I think existing manufacturers essentially take for granted because they built it over a long period of time. And so if I had to do it over again, I would have been much better off either working in the industry myself. I mean, like that's what actually the most tangible thing that I would recommend most people do is, actually getting a deep understanding, working, like building that institutional knowledge by working for somebody else that's doing it. That's why you hear me talk about that strategy so much, because like when you actually are working in a business, working in a process, you are going to be able to learn that institutional knowledge over time. And so that would be a cheat code for doing it. And if you have the ability or the capital, going out and buying that, like I would have been better off buying a small filter manufacturer and using that as my starting point versus trying to build it all from scratch in the way that I did. And I think that that's true in a lot of business processes. Ultimately, you hone these processes over time through lots of trial and error. And in retrospect, it may look very basic on the surface, but the reality is that the devil is in the details. It always is. And that's what I completely kind of underestimated when I went into a business. And honestly, it's a mistake that I've made multiple times where I talk about it a lot in my freight business, or I talk about it somehow. I lost $4.5 million in a failed HVAC service transaction, and I think that it's really comes down to the same things that I kind of dismiss the importance of that institutional knowledge that it kind of seeps in, that people that have been doing it for a long time learn and just kind of inherently operate knowing. And when you just look at these processes as an outsider without having gone through that pain and living the day-to-day reality of that business or that process, it's a lot harder. You just kind of don't know what you don't know, and you're constantly having to learn things the hard way, and it takes a lot longer than you oftentimes think. At least that is my experience, and that is what I underestimated when I got into producing filters. I mean, and like one tangible thing I'll just say, because I talk about it a lot, but I'll repeat it again for those of you that haven't heard it. Like an example of this is like, glue is a very important factor in the filter manufacturing process because everything is glued together. And glue, as I have learned the hard way, is an incredibly difficult substance to work with at scale. And one example is in like we started manufacturing filters in Alabama, which is notoriously humid. And so the settings and the types of glue that you need in Alabama, when it's really humid, are quite different than they are in places where it is not as humid. And the glue people that sell you this glue do not fully understand all the nuances of this and in your application, and it's just because they couldn't. And that was that glue, and the application of that glue effectively almost put me out of business early on, because we could just never get it to dry properly until we had to completely change our process and kind of figure out through trial and error ultimately what worked, and ultimately buying a new type of machine helped us to overcome that. But that took 2.5 years to ultimately figure that out. And it's something that now I know, and like the people that do these processes every day know how to set the machine, how to dial it in exactly so that it gets in each of our manufacturing facilities, we've learned that through trial and error. But that's just an example of a detail that is very insidious. Took us a long time to really figure out that. I think people that have been doing this for a long time take for granted because it's something that they figured out years ago. And when you're starting a new process, even if it looks simple on the outside, oftentimes those details are the ones that really can get you into trouble. And I have learned that lesson the hard way. So when something looks so easy and you say to yourself, "Oh, no problem, I can do this," and you almost always when you say that, you need to be saying to yourself, "I know that I'm missing something. I know that I'm missing something," and go in with some caution. So that would be my answer for you there. Okay, Michael, what's next? Mateo, what are your thoughts on starting a tutoring business, and how can I find my first students? Well, I don't want to discourage you from going into a tutoring business if that is your passion. And I think that there are certainly, applications where tutoring will make a lot of sense. And I think probably and again, I'm just telling you my first impressions, and you got to go out and do your thing. I do think that AI is likely changing the tutoring game very significantly. And I think that if I was thinking about tutoring for older children, like teenagers and above, then to me, the AI and what's coming with AI is really going to be a lot of headwinds to doing a tutoring business, just in my opinion, because it allows so much back and forth and so much specific help that it would basically be impossible for a person to do at scale. So I would be kind of cautious about that. But at the same time, when you say tutoring business, there have to be a infinite number of kind of applications for that. And where my head goes, I would say with younger children, that's probably you're probably less likely to have an AI problem with this, because generally that interpersonal interaction is going to be super important. But then where I worry about is the scalability of something like this, if I'm honest with you, because if you're scaling a human touch tutoring business, you're going to be limited by the quality of your employees or the people that can actually offer that tutoring. And I think that makes it tough. So I think that if you're going to be successful in a tutoring business, I would encourage you to be very specific on the niche that you're going after. And then that's actually going to answer your questions about, how do you find your first students? Well, it's going to depend on what niche you're attacking. I mean, I would much rather see you attacking, I'm going to give you just a random example, but people that are going for citizenship tests, I'd imagine people sometimes need help with that. I have no idea. It's just a random thing that came to my head because of a recent experience I had. And maybe that is your, that is let's say, okay, you're going to have a tutoring business that is going to help people, pass their citizenship test. How would you find, how would you find clients for that? Well, when like if you're scrappy, what I would probably do is go to a law firm that specializes in helping people become citizens and saying, hey, I'm offering this service. Can you refer me, and I'll give you a certain amount of money every time somebody actually takes me up on it. That getting a lead flow from that type of lawyer for this type of business that I just described would make sense. And I use that as an example because if you go and you define who your target, who your ideal customer is, then you have to ask yourself, where is this person where is this person hanging out, or like where is this person going? And in this case, if they're applying to become a citizen, they almost certainly have a immigration lawyer that's helping them to do it. So that would be the answer for that. And I think that if you niche down to start this business, which is what I would recommend if you're gonna make a go at it, then I think you need to be very laser focused on what your ideal customer, what your ideal target is, like what you're tutoring them in, what you're training them to do, and then go, then ask yourself, where is this person today? Where am I going to find them? And then figure out how you can get in front of them in that place. And maybe they're searching a particular type of thing on Google, and so you need to have a landing page and a Google ad. That could be it. That could be an answer. But there are any number of ways you can kind of crack that code. But I would encourage you first to be very specific about who your target customer is, what they look like, how you're helping them, and then meet them wherever they are. And that's true. That's universal business advice. It's true for any business. But you have to kind of reverse engineer based off of your desired outcome first. And in your case, you need to say to yourself, well, if you're really committed to this tutoring business, well, who is your target customer? Like who are you adding the most value to? I like to think about that, and then to kind of build that kind of customer profile in your head, and then ask yourself, where does this person hang out? How do they behave? Are they in a certain type of Facebook group? Are they on Reddit? Like you gotta answer yourself. You gotta put yourself in their mindset and think about, and then reverse engineer how you get in front of them wherever it is that they're hanging out. And that would be how you kind of reverse engineer thinking about this type of business. So that would be my best advice. Niche down, and then when you niche down, then that's going to really allow you to focus on where that customer is, and then get in front of them there, and that's how you're going to find your first clients. So wish you the best of luck if that's what you decide to pursue. John's 44. Where do you see the best ROI in advertising? Google Ads, Facebook, SEO, or something else? John, it's all of the above, and it just depends, right? I mean, it goes back to what I was just saying in the previous question. Is like, you got to be honest, like, where are your highest value customers going to be? Where are you going to find them? And where is the attention? Like where are they hanging out? And I think that is ultimately where you're going to find the highest ROI. And so it just really, really depends. I mean, like if I were starting Filter By, or really any e-commerce business today, I would, and you told me you can only focus on becoming the best at one channel. Like you can only pick one. Knowing what I know today, I would likely pick social selling, like TikTok shops, because that is where the younger attention is going. It is where the bigger brands have not really gone all in on it yet. You see them coming more and more, but there's a lot more white space because of that, meaning it's not as competitive as it's going to be, meaning it's probably only going to get more competitive than it is today. And there is tremendous amounts of demand, and the kind of ecosystem around it is not fully built yet. So that kind of live social shopping, probably with TikTok shops being your anchor for that, is where, like, if I was starting an e-commerce brand, I would probably be 100% laser focused on that. And then use everything else to harness demand around it. I mean, that would be that would be my gut on it. But it really depends on what type of product you're selling. I mean, with air filters, TikTok shop sounds tough, but it's something we're actually making you go at. And I truly believe we'll be successful even selling air filters on TikTok shops or on live social, as crazy as that might sound to some people that are watching this. But you want to go where the eyeballs are, where the customers are, where the attention is. And so, like, if you're only selling to a product to people over the age of 65, then you probably still want to be heavy Facebook, maybe heavy Fox News. I don't know. I mean, like, you want to know wherever your target audience is. So it really depends on who you're selling to. And so that's why that is always the first question you have to ask yourself is, like, who is my target audience? Like, what do they look like? Not physically, meaning like how do they spend their time? Where do they hang out? What did they do for fun? What are their interests? All of those things. Like, that's what you have to reverse engineer. And then you want to be wherever they are. You want to be seen wherever they are. That's just marketing 101, branding 101. So if you answer that, then you're going to answer your highest ROI, because that is where you're going to have the highest ROIs, because that's where the people, that's where the eyeballs are. That's where they're going to be paying attention, and that's where you can get them interested in you. If you, are, selling something to 20-year-olds and you're only advertising, in a retirement community, then probably you may have the best offer. It could be the best product, and you're probably not going to sell anything because you're in the wrong place. It's that simple. I mean, that's what advertising is. You gotta say, well, where are my customers? How am I going to get in front of them? What type of advertising are they interested in? What are their interests? How am I going to associate with them? Those are all the questions you got to answer if you want to answer this question. So I think that people always and I noticed this through all the lives that we do, and even comments on YouTube or conversations I have individually one-on-one with people. People there are oftentimes asking the wrong questions. And when you ask a question like this, and no knock on you, everybody's doing it. You're asking for someone to answer universally a question about your business that you as a business person are responsible for answering first and foremost yourself. And rather than asking which platform should I use, you should be asking what value am I offering? And who is the customer? Who is the ideal customer that I offer the most value to? And then where are those people hanging out? How are those people spending their time? Then you answer those questions. Then you pick a platform based off of the answers to those questions. That is how you solve this problem. You don't solve it by the platform. You solve it by the customer. Like, where does my customer hanging out? What do they look like? What are they interested in? How can I serve them? You answer all of those questions, and then you build your advertising based off of the answers to that, and that's how you win. And that's always how you win. That is the universal answer. That will be the answer 30 years from now. It will be the answer 100 years from now. It will not change. That is universal. The platforms will change. These platforms may not exist 100 years from now, but the answer to that question will still be the right answer. So you need to be asking yourself that question rather than which platform is the best ROI. Like in my business, we try to make each of these platforms an ROI, because air filters, luckily, are used by a whole cross section of people. So we have advertising that is targeted for people over the age of 65. We have advertising that is targeted for first-time home buyers. They may be in completely different places, right? They may hang out in completely different places. But with my marketing team, with our marketing team internally, I always ask this exact same question. Who are we targeting with this campaign? Where is that person likely to be in 2025? How can we create a creative strategy that is going to interest them? These are the right questions that you need to be asking yourself. And if you ask those questions, you ask better questions, you'll start finding that you're getting better answers. And that is what I encourage for everyone. And I'm not discouraging you from asking me questions. I will happily, answer whatever question Michael puts in front of me. But I am going to encourage you to ask better questions for yourself going forward. And this is what I recommend here. Okay, Michael, what's next? Alt 5 with Lee Lohman. How did you evaluate the filter market for growth and investment? Did you cover manufacturing at Goldman? No, I did not cover manufacturing at Goldman. I was an options trader, which had absolutely nothing to do with anything filter or manufacturing or e-commerce related for that matter. So that was not. It did not come from that. I've talked about this a lot, and really it comes down to trial and error and experimentation is the honest answer. I mean, I've experimented with different forms of business, ever since I was young over the years, and I bought and sold a lot of stuff online early on, and so I was always fascinated with e-commerce and really got to understand it over the years. In around 2009, 2010, I started a side hustle while I was still at Goldman, where I was, drop shipping office supplies effectively online. And, we were like one of the drop ship partners that we signed up was a company that was selling air filters. And in a year, about 30% or so of our business, of our office supply business, was actually air filters. And I thought that it was very fascinating. That's how I learned how big of an opportunity or how big of an addressable market the air filter market was. So I started going down that rabbit hole, started understanding how filters were manufactured, started understanding who the other players involved were, understanding what the shipping economics were, all of these things that I learned. I had a little bit of an insight from just, seeing it through a random drop shipping business I had started. It piqued my interest, and I kept studying it more and more and more. And I've, studied it ever since. So that's probably 16 years ago that I first kind of discovered it. And I have just laser focused in on the industry ever since. But it came from experimentation. And that is why you hear me talk about all the time the importance of experimentation. People think that it's going to be that they're going to have some, aha moment, or like somebody's just going to tell them the answer or the cheat code or whatever. And, in my opinion, that just doesn't exist. You're much better off experimenting, chasing your own interest. And then one day, like, you wake up and you have a connection that you put together that you say, oh, this is interesting. And you decide to start, you decide to start going down that rabbit hole, and then you get more interested, you get more convinced that there's an opportunity, and you keep rinsing and repeating that until you build something that's uniquely yours. I mean, that was my experience. And I think that the only way that you're ever going to make those connections is by actually going out and getting experience yourself, and doing side hustles and experimenting with business models at small scale. That's what I've done. I still do it to this day. To be honest with you, I experiment all the time. We as a business experiment all the time. It's a muscle that I built, and we as a business have built. And I think that is how you ultimately go out and build things. And so that's what I recommend. I think I think that you got to follow your curiosity. And if you're a real entrepreneur, you're always going to be looking for side hustles and businesses that you can start or experiment with. Follow those curiosities. And then one day there's going to be something that's compelling enough for you that you want to keep learning about and studying and experimenting with, and then ultimately go all in on. And that is effectively my experience. And I think that is replicatable by almost anyone. If you follow it. So that's how I would answer that. Okay, Michael, what's next? I hate my current job. I'm sorry to hear that. And I want to join my family business and expand it in e-commerce. Should I leave it right now or wait for some time? Oh, that's an unanswerable question with the information given. So, like you're looking for a definitive answer. I will say, like, if you truly hate your current job and you're young, um, like, then I think you should like go out and do something different. I mean, like if you're there's life's too short to do something that makes you miserable. And I think that's universally true. Obviously, you have to put food on the table. You got to make sure you can provide for yourself and family if you have obligations. But if you're miserable, then go out and do something that makes you not miserable. So that's just good life advice, in my opinion. Like you shouldn't stick around in a job or an environment that you hate. Um, you know, just because you're scared, because life's too short for that. So I think that would be my answer to that. In terms of you want to join your family business and expand it into e-commerce. I mean, obviously, I have no idea what kind of business you're in. How successful it is, like how much like what market it's in, whether or not it's e-commerceable or not. I that only you can answer those questions. Um, I would say that, I would not just go and join a family business lightly, in that, family businesses are notoriously tricky and difficult, and lots of, emotion and personalities involved. And, oftentimes maybe you do not have the firm legal agreements that you would have in normal business that are designed to protect everyone and protect shareholders. And I think that family businesses can be very tricky because of that. And so, I would hate to see you leave a current job, be miserable, and then go and be even more miserable because you're dealing with family dynamics, without any, and ultimately feel like you're building a business that you may not that you may not, get the ownership of in the way that you think you deserve, or all these things that happen. And so, like, if you're going to do that, I highly recommend setting expectations up front, being very clear about what your expectations are, what you intend to do, how you intend to be compensated, if how based off how things go, and even putting that into writing. I would recommend, even though it's sometimes taboo, maybe, but I think that, like, honestly, I've seen so many examples where things go wrong in these situations, and I think if you're going to go and devote your life to this, you're definitely better off being clear about your expectations from the beginning, and not just making the assumption that because it's family, you're going to have the outcome that you want, because I think you're likely going to be disappointed, because that's just human nature, unfortunately. So, I would make sure that you went in eyes wide open with that. And particularly if you're going to come in and change the business and really grow it, like you need to be very clear. Everyone needs to be very clear about what success looks like how things will evolve if you are successful. All of these types of things, you need to have ironed out before you take the leap into that. So the answer, maybe, if I'm honest with you, is that you should quit your job, but maybe you should go out and build something or work in something that gives you more fulfillment, and not go direct to the family business. Go out and maybe get some experience that's related to it, really increase your value, so that when you come into that family business, you come in from a place of strength. That would maybe, but on the limited information that you've given me, that would maybe be my best advice, if I'm honest with you. Maybe you're thinking a little too narrowly, and maybe it's a bigger opportunity set for you that you should consider. So that would be my, like, I would just hate to see you quit a job you're miserable in and just go to a family business because it looks easy on the outset, but then set yourself up for a lifetime of misery because you didn't plan it out, and you didn't take the time to go out and build the skills and framework that you need to really even be successful in that family business. So I think maybe that would be my recommendation is quit your job, but go out and find something that's more aligned with what you want to be doing with the rest of your life, and take it from there. So I wish you the best of luck on your journey, whatever decision you make. So best of luck to you. Carlos Gonzalez. Hello, David. Carlos here from Mexico. I have a question. Buy or start a business? What do you think about it? Apples or oranges? They're both can be good fruit, but are quite different. It depends on your mood. I mean, the answer is there is no definitive right or wrong answer to this. Both are viable. Both have their pluses and both have their minuses. What I would say is the real answer is going to come down to like your experience, in my opinion. I think that if you have no experience in the industry that you're looking at, then buying a business, while it sounds good, is actually a lot more risky, because operating, like when you go in and you're buying something that you've never operated before, oftentimes there are going to be things that are hidden that are that would be obvious for you if you've had experience or you worked in that business for a while, that would not be so obvious for you as a outsider that's just coming in to break into an industry. And so I know it's maybe not popular in the social media guru space right now to say, but I personally think buying a business, especially a small business, is oftentimes way riskier than starting one. And that's conventional wisdom that I use. I probably would have told you otherwise, just because of conventional wisdom a number of years ago. But as I've documented, and I think it's like our 4th YouTube video we put out, I effectively lost $4.5 million buying an HVAC service business. There were a lot of kind of schemes underlying it that, in retrospect, are super obvious, but obviously when we bought it, were not so obvious. And by that time, I was a fairly experienced operator, and had built a successful business and thought I really knew a lot about business. And I still, made that mistake. And so I used that as a cautionary tale, in that, I came in with a decent amount of experience and money and problem solving ability, and still was unsuccessful in that. And, I just know that it's just buying a business is not in and of itself the answer. It can be, but you have to know what you're doing. So if you don't have any industry experience, I would recommend maybe starting small and building up and earning, and learning the hard way, actually, because I think in the long run, it can be, it actually may be slower in the beginning, but allows you way more leverage later on. And so that would be kind of my gut feel. But if you understand the industry really well, you've worked in it before, and you have the ability to evaluate that industry, and you understand how to run a business in that industry, then I think buying a business can be a cheat code. And like I've actually looked at a couple of small filter manufacturing businesses, and for me, like that would be a very it's very easy for me to decide if it's something that's a good business or not, because I have such a deep knowledge and understanding of it from having built it myself the first time, that then it would not be risky at all for me, or very low risk for me, to go in and buy that type of business, because I know exactly what I'm going into. I know my leverage points. I know how I'm going to sell product. I know how to hire the right type of manager in different situations. Like, I've done all of that through experience. And so because of that, then I think buying can be a great way to go out and, grow. But I think if I was just starting out, not knowing anything then about an industry, then I think you're better off either going out and working in that industry for a while first, and then making your decision. I think that's probably my favorite advice, if you have the patience and the stomach for it, or to go out and start small and build it on your own. and be willing for it to grow a little bit slower in the beginning, but then you build your systems, your framework, your understanding of that business that's going to set you up for much larger growth later on. And I'll tell you one thing that I have learned in doing this is if you get good at that muscle, you get good at that building muscle, and you learn your industry and your business, what's going to happen is you're going to find that you don't want to buy, like you don't necessarily want to buy businesses in your industry in the way that you originally thought you would, because you're going to find that you have the skills and the understanding to be able to grow and build way cheaper than going out and paying for infrastructure that already exists. And at least so far, this has largely been my experience. And so I think if you could build only one skill, it would be that skill to build and build it on your own, because I think over time you just get so much more leverage and higher return on your investment in the long term. So I know that like the reality is both can be great, and I know people that have been successful both of these routes. So there absolutely is no right or wrong answer to this question. But I do think that if you don't have experience in the industry you're going into, that buying a small business is a lot riskier than it probably looks. The ironic thing about this, and what's sad, and this is why I think that the conventional wisdom is what it is, and it's also why I think a lot of the gurus that talk about buying baby boomer businesses and stuff really are mean well, but are misguided, unfortunately. But it's that larger business transactions, like ones that are $5 million of EBITDA plus, are actually ironically way less risky than the small transactions. And the reason for that is because when you get up to that point, you generally have audited financial statements, you have a management team, you have history, you have bank relationships, you have all of these things established that, like when the ownership changes, it's way less likely that you're going to have like big problems, big unknowns that could not be overcome, because it's a more robust thing. But like when you're looking at small businesses, like businesses that may make a few $100,000 a year, type businesses, oftentimes what you're going to find is that when you take the owner and that institutional knowledge that we talked about early on in the live today, when you take that out of it, all of a sudden it's not nearly the well-functioning machine that you were sold. And if you don't have the industry experience, like you don't know what success looks like, you don't know what a good system looks like, then it can really be painful to have to figure that out. And it's actually harder to figure that out. And this is more or less what happened to us in the HVAC business that I talk about in that video. But ironically, like if things go south for reasons that maybe outside of your control, when you have all the infrastructure that you bought for a larger business or an ongoing existing business, it's actually way harder to kind of get yourself out of that hole. It's a lot more operationally complex than it is if you're starting out small and just kind of building brick by brick, and maybe doing a lot of stuff yourself and kind of figuring things out the hard way. But you don't have all that existing overhead like hanging over yourself, or like a debt payment if you buy any debt or do any financing when you buy the small business. And I think that that's what happens to a lot of people that do buy a small business and they maybe finance it, even seller finance it, then things maybe are not like working out in the way they originally thought. And then it can spiral very quickly because you still have to pay those debt payments. You are still trying to figure out a way to make payroll and keep your thing going. And that's just a really painful place to be. And, I just would encourage you to not get yourself into that type of situation lightly. I know like the SBA loans and everything people talk about and say it's a great way to build wealth. And it can be, it absolutely can be. And I think that it can be great for people. But, I think that, I would only give people advice to do that and execute that strategy if they actually understood, if they had actually worked in that industry themselves already and really understood how those businesses are run, then I think that de-risk it. But so many people that are doing this are like, oh, I currently work a finance job. I'm going to go out and buy a plumbing business in Kansas and finance it with an SBA loan. It's only 3 times EBITDA. So, I'm making 33% a year. I'm going to buy 20 of them over the next 5 years and be rich. And then they get in and they start operating it. And like the owner retires after the 3-month period, and then all the employees leave, or they realize that there was some shady sales practice going on that they can't continue to do. That's really the reality of a lot of these transactions. Not all of them, but a lot more than I think people talk about on the internet. And that's why I think it's a lot riskier than it looks. Doesn't mean it can't work, but it's a lot riskier than it looks. So we're going to do some more videos on this stuff. Actually, it's something that I am quite passionate about, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to package it up and actually talk about it, and talk about how you would actually buy a business if you wanted to do it, or how you would actually start a business if you wanted to do it. When do you think about doing what? But I just gave you my high-level thoughts on it, and hopefully you find it useful. If you'd like to see more content like that, leave us some comments. And that's just one thing I'll note in general. I would appreciate it if you would like this this live stream and go and watch our YouTube videos. We put a lot of work into it, so I really do would appreciate it if you would do it. But also, if there's particular topics that you're interested in, obviously you can ask questions, and we're going to keep answering questions here. But if there are specific topics that you are really interested in us diving into, please, write it in a comment somewhere and let us know, because I'm definitely interested in digging into the subjects that are on people's minds, or that people want perspective on, or that maybe want details on. And we are doing our best to put out content every week that we think feeds into that, based off of interest that we see. But I do think that this last question we just answered is an important aspect of it. Is like, should you buy a business? Should you build a business? Like how do you think about it? And I think that there's so many people that have moved into the buy, don't build space, that we actually need to talk a little bit about, like, hey, maybe when you shouldn't buy. Doesn't mean you can't, that buying businesses is bad. It's perfectly acceptable and can be a great strategy. But I also think building can be a great strategy, and is oftentimes, ironically, less risky, even though that's not what it's sold as by other people that I see. So if that's a subject you're interested in really hearing more about, leave us some comments about it, and maybe we'll dig into it. So with that, okay, Michael, we can go to another question. The Matrix. How to align your team members with your vision. I have a team of 7, from devs, designer. How do I align them together? Well, based off of how you asked the question, I would ask you, like, do you have a clear vision yourself? Like, can you write down what that vision is? Can you articulate it on a Zoom meeting? I think you need to have clarity of vision first and foremost. And, it's like, I hope you do, but like, I think that it all starts with you as the leader having clarity of vision. And then once you have clarity of vision, then every time you are meeting with your employees, and you only have 7 people, so I'm hoping you're meeting with them all regularly, you need to be aligning and communicating what they are doing in the context of your vision. And once you get that alignment in place, you're going to find that people start to behave in the way that aligns with your vision. And if not, and if they don't, then you have a cultural fit or misfit, and you have to move on and be willing to and be willing, to act against that. And I think for us internally, we're actually, we do mid-year reviews. We do like mid-year reviews and then end-of-year reviews. And one of the things that in the last couple of years, I've really been very vocal and consistent around what our mission is, what our values as a company are, and every time we are giving reviews or have hard conversations with people, it's in the context of those values that we as a business find important. And there have been cases where we have we've had well-performing employees that do not align with our values, and we have coaching conversations with them about it, or we make it clear, and they do not align with the values that we as a business exhibit, and we have to make hard decisions in those situations. But the reason I bring that up is you have to be willing to actually live and uphold the values that you want your company to exhibit. And that all starts with you. Like, you have to live them first and foremost. That's why you have to understand, like, you have to be very clear on what your vision is, what your vision for the business is, what your values are. And by the way, if you've never really dug into this, I do recommend the book Traction, which walks you through how to do this as a business. It's like a business operating system. We do not follow the Traction or EOS system exactly within FilterBuy. We kind of have our own, but like I am heavily influenced by that. And it was actually the book that gave me clarity on the importance of this. So I would highly recommend reading that to help you to answer this question. But then you have to really do the work and be willing to commit, to commit yourself to that vision and to the values that align with that. And then you have every conversation you have with your team has to be relative to that and with that in mind. And you have to be willing to hire people and terminate people on the basis of those values, and make sure that that everyone that you have on your team is aligned with them. And that is your job as a leader to make that happen. So, that's really how I think about it. But the nice thing is, with 7 people, you can clearly do this if you have the clarity of vision. And that's where it's got to start. It's got to start with you and your clarity of the vision, and everything else will stem from that. So I think it's a super important thing. It's something I wish I had done earlier. To be honest with you, it's something that I did kind of late in our journey, and I've seen the impact from doing it, the positive impacts from doing it, and being clear on this. And we still have a lot of improvements internally to really live it, and we work as something we work on every single day, and it's something my management team is very focused on. But my management team very much aligns with our values and our mission, and then they manage people that they uphold to these same standards, and it's a cascading effect, and that's really how you build a lasting organization, in my opinion, and it's something that I'm extremely committed to doing. So that's how I think about it, and I'm very proud of you for starting it so early on in your journey with 7 employees. You can definitely get ahead of this, and I think that you're going to find it to be such a cheat code if you actually live it and scale it right. So I wish you the best of luck on that. Okay, Michael, what's next? Quantum leap event. I want a quantum leap. If you can help me with a quantum leap, that would be beautiful. Your wisdom and candid approach on helping others with business practices and value with culture is admirable. What are your thoughts on infusing AI into the business operationally? This is like one of those things that is such a, it's such an all-encompassing question. I mean, I think that the reality is that as a business owner in any business, you constantly have to be evaluating your processes for efficiency and looking and finding better ways to do things. I mean, like that is just core to being an operator of a business. And so you have to constantly be examining your processes and finding ways to be better, be more efficient, utilize new technology. And I just put AI in that bucket. And it's definitely something that, each of my leaders are extremely focused on. They understand how important it is, and it's something we talk about a lot, and are constantly looking for ways to improve and to improve our processes. And so, it's something that each of our teams is very focused on. The area that I personally see the most value operationally for us at this moment is really within our data analytics kind of function and our marketing function, which they kind of correlate behind the scenes. But there's just so much, like having a high level analyst in AI at your disposal just has allowed us to unlock so much insight and value that then we're able to go out and put it into practice. And so like that is the most tangible place, like almost as an AI, like operational researcher, data researcher, like how like that kind of vibe is where we found it to be where I found it to be the most like truly impactful. And then of course, like within our development function, we use AI a lot. And it's super, it allows us to be a lot more efficient in that, of course. But the analytical kind of partner is the area that, I feel like we've gotten the most actual value on, and I see that continuing to increase. But where I think people get this wrong is that it still takes good people to be able to clean up the data and make sure that we're asking the right questions and looking at the right things. And it's not the kind of thing you can just hook AI up to a database and have all the answers that you ever wanted. I think we're still quite a long ways away from that. I think it's super powerful, but it's a tool still today, and it's all about how you actually use it. And I think we're getting better and better operationally about using it as a tool appropriately. But I don't think it's as much of a it's why at least short term, I think there's going to be lots of jobs that get displaced or movement, but like the people that actually have bring value and have that knowledge, which I talk about all the time, and know how to like use AI to enhance it, are going to just find AI to be such a monster leverage point. And that's how I see it in our business. And that's really how we're using it and where we're using it the most. Okay, Michael, I'll do one more if you have a quick one you want to give me. Bruce Scott, what are your views on debt, personally and business debt related? How much of your net worth do you think is reasonable to invest in a new business venture as someone with an established career and family? There are no universal truths in life. And I know everybody watching this channel probably gets tired of hearing me saying it. But there are no universal right or wrong answers to this question. I think it's highly variable. But in general, I will say that the more debt that you have, the less optionality you have, either as a business or as an individual. And in my life, I'm all about maximum, optionality. And so for me, that means having minimum amounts of debt is my preference. I think that I'm not in a Dave Ramsey world where say you shouldn't have any debt. I do have mortgage debt, and we have equipment debt on our some of our equipment, just because it makes financial sense to do that. And also I'm completely bootstrapped and don't have any outside investors. So you ultimately have to fund this stuff from somewhere. But we've kept it minimal, and I intend to continue to keep it minimal as time goes on, just because I think that having less debt gives you a lot more optionality. Like when you have business debt, depending on the type of debt you have, but like if you have debt against like the EBITDA of the business, which a lot of private equity firms do, or a lot of people that buy businesses do, then that forces you to meet certain bank covenants. And if you have to meet those certain bank covenants, you may have growth initiatives that you say to yourself, well, if I make less money this year, I know I can really make a lot more money in the future because I have opportunities to invest in my business, non-capital type investments. Maybe it's on marketing or other things that don't get capitalized. And if you do that, then, but if you say you want to do that strategy, if you have bank covenants, even if you can continue to pay that debt, the bank may say, hey, you're in breach of this covenant and you're going to be in trouble. So you're going to have to operate the business so that it hits a certain profitability today, even if it's not going to maximize your profitability in the future. And I'm one who prefers optionality, and like my choice is, and oftentimes in the past has been, I'm going to invest that money today, show less earnings today, so I have more optionality, so I'm going to make more money in the future. I can do that because I don't have bank covenants on my EBITDA. But if you do, then you're not able to go out and do that strategy. And so that's the type of thing that I would be that's how I viewed it. It's like like the more debt you have today, the less optionality you have in the future. And my preference is to have more optionality. And so I think that that is just what you have to keep in mind. But it's always a sliding scale and it's a balance. And like early on, if I had not taken debt to buy the business, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And I think that you have to be willing to take calculated risk and calculated bets. And so it's something that, I definitely am not going to sit here and tell you I'm against it. But I think it's something that you should not do lightly, and you have to be very intentional about how you use it. And I think for most people, most of the time, that means using less rather than using more. And I think that is pretty universally true. But it's all situationally dependent. And I think you have to know yourself and answer that question ultimately for yourself. But those are the high level feelings that I have for it. So with that, I'm done with the Q&A today. I'll be back next Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern to take your questions, anything business related. I appreciate you showing up and asking these great questions. Have a lot more great questions coming in, and I really do appreciate it. Would appreciate it if you hit the like button on this stream. Really does help us. But then even more importantly, watch our weekly videos on Friday. We put a lot of work into them, and give us feedback in the comments. Like, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to hear more about? That really helps. Like, we do go through them all. And when we're thinking about our content calendar, it's definitely, we definitely take it into account. And so I would appreciate any feedback, any comments that you have, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take it all. But I appreciate you showing up. I wish you a wonderful week ahead. Don't forget to go out and take action against whatever it is that deep down you should be taking action against. That's always the cheat code. That's almost always the answer. And if I leave you with anything, I hope I leave you with that. So have a wonderful week ahead, and I'll see you next Friday.